When people think about Indiana's economy, they usually think about our largest cities. But across the state, hundreds of communities are solving problems, creating jobs, building housing, and shaping the future. Those stories deserve to be told. This is the overlooked economy.
Welcome to the first episode of The Overlooked Economy. I'm Chris A. Martin, and this podcast is about the communities, businesses, workers, and local leaders who oftentimes work hard but get overnoticed and overlooked. For this first episode, I wanted to spend some time with a couple friends, some friends who know what it's like to build a community up, and especially after the pandemic. So joining me today are two great friends, where all three of us took office at the same time, and the pandemic hit. So I want to introduce Richard Strick as the mayor of Huntington, and Mayor Steve McMichael of
New Haven.
Very good.
Is this a quiz to start
yes.
things
I was
off?
wanting to make sure you know where your cities are. So. All right, so we're starting off great. So during the pandemic, when the pandemic hit, what was some of the things that, as you're coming into office, and correct me, you both were city council members before mayor,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay, so you had the political experience, so you kind of had an idea of what the economy was going to look like, what projects you wanted to do, things like that. Then here comes the pandemic. So can you tell me what were some of those things as you're coming into office and you've got all these plans set, you're ready to go, and then the pandemic hit? What kind of changes did you have to make from those kinds of actions that happened?
Well, for example, I thought it was very interesting because veteran mayors like Mayor Hickman up in Angola, Mayor Long in Wabash kept saying, I feel bad for you guys. You just started and this hits. It's like, well, actually, we don't know any differently. Yep. So to us, this is normal. But I think those early days of just trying to get a handle on what was happening in the community and kind of putting aside some of those long-range goals that we wanted to implement and just deal with what was in front of us, keeping the community strong and resilient. We spent a lot of time letting people know what restaurants were open, how to get food, how to support local businesses. So we shifted, but again, we really didn't know any different because we didn't know what it was like before COVID.
Yeah, and I remember Mayor Hickman even at one point saying, look, we're all rookies now, so make sure that you stay engaged in the region, speak up. And much to Mayor McMichael's point, what I found was that was a natural way to build trust in the community. Anytime there's a conflict or a crisis, you've got a chance to deepen relationships. And so it really ended up setting the foundation for the remaining work over the last 5 years since we came out of the COVID pandemic.
Very good. Okay, so obviously the pandemic didn't create every economic shift that we're experiencing, right? But it accelerated some of those things, right? And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was more of your online retail sales. We're seeing a lot of AI, we're seeing a lot of technology and things like that. But online retail sales increased 43% during the first year of the pandemic, 43%. By the first quarter of this year, e-commerce accounted for nearly 17% of the total retail sales. Now, compared with the same period 1 year earlier, online sales were still growing considerably faster than total retail sales. So in March of this year, nearly 23% of working Americans performed at least some work from home. And so those are some of the changes, right, that we've seen since the pandemic. And so we're not going to go back, right? We know that we're not going to go back to that pre-economic time, right? So as we continue to move forward, one of the things to think about is those changes. How a pandemic, just one worldwide pandemic, could completely change the economic landscape for a community. And so one of the things that we talk about in economic development is the jobs. Right? Everybody talks about jobs. We want jobs. We need jobs. We need the investments. So did 2020, with jobs in mind, keeping that subject in mind, did that change? Because now you've got people working from home, right? You've got more people that are utilizing online sales, with retail buying, things like that. So how do you adjust your economic strain or focus as a mayor?
Well, for us, I first of all, I always look at challenges bring great opportunities, and that's how I always approach things. So it's actually been. I don't want to go back to the old world, to be honest with you. I like the changes that have happened. I think that the pandemic made us become more efficient personally, professionally, and as government. I think that we started looking at things that we could do better, we could serve better, like making sure that community meetings were live streamed and to have that additional input. So frankly, I would not want to go back to a pre-pandemic time. I think that this has brought out a lot of really good things over time.
I would agree. Mayor?
Yeah, and I think at some point you're trying to swim upstream if you do try and go back in time with it. And I think one of the things we learned, too, is that work from home doesn't necessarily mean less productive. In fact, in many ways, it was more productive, and we had to spend more time coaching people in work-life balance and how to shut it off. But ultimately, watching people embrace new technologies, and that creates new jobs and new economic sectors. And so I think that's what's reflected in your stats there.
I'd like to add, too, the electric Amazon vans that go around all of our towns and really don't pay anything towards the maintenance of the roads is something that we're all going to have to address. We're going to have to figure this out. I don't know if it's a 50-cent delivery fee that goes to the municipality or the county and that money is spread out. But now that Amazon has a complete fleet of electric vehicles, the licensing is, that money goes to the state, not necessarily to the county where that plate is. Now, there could be a wheel tax on it, but that's not going to the Huntingtons necessarily or the New Havens or the Logansports. So this is something that was accelerated through COVID, and we're going to have to think differently about things like this.
Absolutely. You're right. So what has permanently changed in Huntington and New Haven since you two have taken office?
Well, I don't think anything's permanent except change. So I think there's been a lot of dynamics that have shifted for folks. So one of the things culturally, even my predecessor did a great job of building out 8 miles of trails in his administration for us. And, for some folks, that was a waste of money. Who needs trails? This is dumb. You can go for a walk on a sidewalk anytime you want. But lo and behold, after you got done with the lockdown from President Trump, everybody was eager for fresh air and using the trails. And by and large, that's an argument that's in the past. Folks don't question the investment anymore as long as it's a trail that's going to a route of things they want to explore. But then the flip side is also true. When we're online, there's a tendency for us to forget about the human on the other side of things. And, I do think that our discourse has downgraded in how we treat one another in local communities. And that's not, it's a generality. It's not everyone, but it's definitely, that's one of my biggest concerns is just helping neighbors remind themselves that they're neighbors. And you can say what you want on Facebook, but at the end of the day, you still share a fence line.
Yeah, I'd like to build on that.
Absolutely.
The dehumanization of people. I read an article a few months ago about the outrage industrial complex, where everybody just wants to be mad, it seems, about something they don't even know why. And it's unfortunate because the social media platforms, through their algorithm, are cashing in on this. They're making millions, if not billions of dollars off our anger against each other. And to Mayor Strick's point, we're still neighbors. We still share a fence. I've got neighbors that are of a different political persuasion than I am. I love these people. They're great people. They're not evil people, despite where if you've read something on X or you read something on Facebook about we're supposed to hate somebody because we happen to vote differently. We've got to change that. And if that's going to happen, it's going to happen at the local level. It's certainly not going to happen at the national level.
That's a good point. That's an excellent point, and I think it's spot on, So one of the things that I looked at, when I was leaving was that, I'm 35 years old. I was elected at 28, and after 6 years of being mayor in a community that was continuing to do that, what are you going to do? You're going to leave. You're not going to stay in a job. right? Where you're being dehumanized and bullied. So I think that is a message that really needs to resonate with a lot more people.
One of the things I've done to kind of address this is I host a weekly radio show on a community radio station in New Haven, and we podcast it, and it's called New Haven Newsmakers with Mayor Steve. The whole purpose of the show is to humanize people. The police chief, he's got kids, he's got a family, he goes to church, all these things. And here's the problem. When we break down the humanization of people, now all of a sudden it's easy to say something bad about that person. It's easy to wish something bad upon that person, and it could also become easy to harm that person physically or otherwise. We have got to, for the sake of humanity, we've got to work together. We got to figure this out.
Absolutely. I agree. Yes. So are residents and businesses asking something different from their community today than before you started as mayor? So Mayor Strick, you were mentioning, trails and how before the pandemic, people weren't really, is that maybe something that would be an example?
Well, again, any group is going to have its mixed bag of opinions, right? And I think by and large, what folks are looking for is they want local government to stand up for them and advocate for improvements in their community. And that goes across a whole gamut of subjects. But what I've learned is that the important thing that we lead with is that we're making these investments in ourselves for our own sake. And if there's other people that want to come in from outside of the community and make investments or move here, they're welcome. We're going to make sure we got an open sign on the edge of the community there. But we're doing this first and foremost for our own sake and for the sake of our kids and grandkids. And that's why we do the trails. And that's why we do housing. And that's why we do childcare. And that's why we support downtown Main Street locally owned businesses. Because those are the fingerprints of a community. I like to pick on Applebee's because they've got the eating good in the neighborhood, but they're never in a neighborhood, and they're a dime a dozen. That's why people like them. You like knowing what you can walk in and find the same thing on the same menu 30 miles from home. But your local businesses, they're the fingerprint of your community, and the more that we can help people understand that and appreciate it. And it used to be, it was a tension about, you have to pay more to shop local. And by and large, a lot of our businesses have really improved their ability to deliver more cost effectively. But anymore, I find the tension tends to be about, I don't like what that person says on Facebook. Again, coming back to that neighborliness and, kind of this thought police mentality that folks have towards their neighbors. And, the reality is I don't agree with everyone. And I don't agree with myself all the time. So, the idea that we're going to hold this standard to, if I didn't like one thing you said, then I'm not going to support your business or go there again. It's nonsense and foolishness, and it undermines the whole community. So I think one of the things that changes is that folks, ultimately we have a concern about making sure that the investment is distributed evenly throughout the community, right? We all have a sense that, is my neighborhood being overlooked or not? And so part of the challenge in local communities is really demonstrating where the investment goes and showing people and helping them understand the math behind it, because it is complicated. One of the worst analogies that was out there is that, the city budget's just like your kitchen table or your checkbook. It's like, no, it's 6,500 checkbooks and none of us agree on what the top priority is. And so we elect representatives to set those budget priorities and make those investments. And then mayors get to be the ones that execute on the plan.
The biggest change since I came into office, and I'm really proud of this, and part of the reason I ran for mayor was there was kind of an inferiority complex in New Haven. I would hear all the time, good enough for New Haven. And I'm like, what does that mean, good enough for New Haven? Yep. Shouldn't we have the same standards as Carmel or Boyd or fill in the blank? I don't hear that anymore. We've gotten some swagger to us, and I love that. I'm proud of that. And frankly, that's part of the reason why I ran for office, because I got tired of hearing good enough for New Haven.
So everything is good in New Haven, right?
Everything is great in New Haven.
That's right. Exactly.
and getting better. But that being said, all joking aside, we learn from our mistakes.
Absolutely.
We always try to do better. And yes, there have been mistakes made. There's no doubt about it.
Of course. Absolutely. We're human.
That's right.
So technology, as we've been talking about, is obviously here, right? And we talk about AI and data centers and all these things. And it's in its 2024 and 2034 employment projections released in August of 2025. The Bureau of Labor Statistics projected overall employment growth of 3.1%. 3.1%. And so much of that is concentrated in specific areas. And we're talking about healthcare and professional science, technical services, and then at the same time, automation is expected to reduce demand for some routine office, production, and administrative work. So that doesn't necessarily mean that technology eliminates every job, right? Because what we're hearing now, AI is going to eliminate all these jobs, things like that. What are employers telling you today that they are not telling you, that they weren't telling you when you first took office?
I really can't answer that, Chris, but I do want to say this. This is no doubt no different than it was 130, 140 years ago during the Industrial Revolution. The car is going to put all the horseshoe blacksmiths out of business, or this or this. We adapt. We're resilient. We're Americans, and we figure it out. And we're going to figure this out too. And we always seem to come out with a higher standard of life after these changes. And I believe in the American dream. I'm a proud American. I'm a proud Hoosier, and I believe we're going to figure this out. And I believe that we're going to make things better because of it. Will there be some left behind? Unfortunately, yes. Will there be those that are able to move ahead of it because of this? Yes, there will be. We just need to make sure that there's training and other opportunities for those that are being left behind. And
that was going to be my follow-up is, so do you feel like at that point that you as a mayor in your community, because of the size of our communities, under 25,000, when you think about that, how do you educate some of those that are of the older generation that maybe don't want to learn about change? They don't want to learn about it. So how do you adapt to that? How do you explain to your citizens, look, folks, you got to learn it or you're going to be behind?
Well, admittedly, some of them don't. I mean, if they're at that stage of life where they're looking at an exit ramp in 5 or 6 years, then they might not need to, and that's okay. That's part of it. But I always think that when you're trying to bring folks along, you got to connect with handholds of what they already recognize. So, if we're talking about an older generation.
Notice he looked at me when he said that.
They've lived through tremendous amounts of change, right? I mean, think of all the change you've seen in your life, Mayor McMichael, right? No, we all do. Every era.
Yes.
That's, to his point, we eliminated 90% of the blacksmithing jobs, right? And we created 100% of the gas attendant jobs. And now that's declining, right? Because we got away from mandatory gas attendants, so you pump your own gas because it's more efficient and effective that way. And, the economy is constantly in motion. The nation is constantly in motion. As I said earlier, the one constant is change. And so how do we manage ourselves within that? How do we invite our people to manage themselves within that and give them the tools and the resources to make a better life for their family tomorrow than they had today?
That's awesome. I always say, when you're working on something, you're always doing it for the betterment of others. It's not always about you, And so one of the things that going off topic here, one of the things that I experienced as mayor was this idea, because we're talking about age, one of the things that maybe if I wasn't wearing a suit, if I wasn't, dressed like a mayor should be, right? Didn't have a tie on, I was constantly, well, what is he doing, type thing. And so is that something that you guys see in your communities is constant, a judging of what you're wearing or where you're going, those kinds of things? Is that something you guys see often?
I don't. My career before I became mayor I was a real estate broker. I owned a brokerage. And I learned a long time ago that you dress for who you're talking to, who you're meeting. And I treat the same way. I treat the CEO of the largest corporation in town with the same amount of respect. And I treat the person that is having an issue because they had a dog that ran off. I treat that person with the same amount of respect. And some of that is being in their lane, right? And being there for them and being one of them. So no, do people in New Haven sometimes judge me if I'm not wearing a suit? Maybe, but you know what? Frankly, I don't care. I'm authentic, I'm organic, and I am who I am, and I work hard every day to make New Haven better, and if I have to wear a tie to do that, then that's just not who I am.
Okay. Mayor?
I mean, the reality is, as an elected official, you live in a fishbowl. That's part of it. And it's a glass house. People are going to throw stones. It's not fair. Get over it. You chose it, right? Not only did you volunteer for it, in most cases, most of us paid a portion of our own income to achieve it, right? With campaign contributions. But the reality is that, to Mayor McMichael's point, is you dress for the job, right? And there's different approaches to it. So for me, rule number one is I only buy comfortable dress clothes because I'm not going to be the one who's dressed down in the room because I never know who's coming in at that moment and who we're meeting with. But the bigger point is how do you treat the folks in the room? Whether they judge me based on, the cover of this book and my clothes, that's their call. But that's not how I operate in life, and that's not how I choose to engage with people around me. But, we were joking around earlier, but, I had a dear friend pass away, and Sunday night after the visitation, I was still in a suit, and I went down to our local Dairy Queen, came up to the window, and the workers all got a kick out of serving a guy in a suit, and got to hang out with some of my neighbors and constituents at the picnic table and just enjoy a blizzard as we watched a beautiful sky roll overhead. And that's what life in Indiana is about.
I know, and it's Huntington, and I've recently moved to Huntington, and I can say that is true. It is absolutely gorgeous in Huntington.
It's just better here.
Yeah, there you go. Poor McMichael. All right, so how should a smaller community approach artificial intelligence and automation without either ignoring the opportunity or creating unnecessary fear?
I embrace it. I think there's great opportunities because of it. I personally use AI as a tool, and what I found is it finds the things in my blind spots. Mm-hmm. I'll put something in, and I'll do an analysis of it. I didn't think of that. And so it's made me better. It's made me think of things that I wouldn't think of, and it's actually altered my thought process for the better. So I embrace it. I suggest that people in the community embrace it. Try it out. If you haven't tried it out yet, do. But I guarantee you've used AI, whether you realize it or not. Mm-hmm. But the platforms, Copilot or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you happen to be using, it's an interesting tool. But I always believe in being a little skeptical. Not a cynic, but being skeptical. I think for me, that's the line. I'm skeptical of things, but I try to never be a cynic. So I look into it. I try to look at it through a clear lens. But I embrace it, and I recommend that if you haven't tried AI purposely, that you do.
Yeah, and I would just say that I would encourage folks to approach this the way that they approach any change in life, with curiosity and wisdom. It's a chance to experiment, try new things, learn new things. I use AI to teach myself new functions on spreadsheets because I'm really comfortable with spreadsheets. That's the technology I grew up with, and went and learned through school and classes all the way through. But there's always something new to learn, and I think if you approach life with curiosity and then you take in the best of it and you sort out the good from the bad, and just recognize all of this is their tools and technology. The good or the bad is what you assign to it, what meaning you assign to it, and how you use it, and what you're functioning for. And at the end of the day, practice wisdom.
In a simple way, this kind of reminds me of when I was a kid in grade school. I'm 60 years old. I was in grade school in the 70s, and they would always say, well, you're not always going to have a calculator with you, so you can't use a calculator, so you got to learn how to do math.
I heard the same thing in the 90s.
Right. So now we happen to have a calculator and everything else with us all the time. I don't think that AI is any different.
I agree. Yeah, I would agree. So now let's talk about Huntington and New Haven. All right. So Huntington has a huge project, right? Hanjung. Mm-hmm. And so the project includes a 435,000 square foot facility with an initial workforce of approximately 300 people. Full employment is expected to exceed 440 positions, with average wages projected above $28 an hour. Operations are expected to begin in June of 2027. So that is a major opportunity, major investment, but it also creates responsibility for a community, especially of Huntington size. So my question is, what does a project like Hanjung mean for Huntington beyond the initial investment and job announcement? So beyond what we are hearing, what does a project like that mean for Huntington?
Well, to Steve's point earlier, I mean, every crisis or challenge is an opportunity within it. And one of the big things, especially connected to AI and other industries and sectors, is power generation, right? And what do we do with our grid? Our grid was developed slowly and thoughtfully over 100, 120 years, depending on how you count it. And now we're expecting to overhaul the thing in 10 years. And that's just not going to happen. That's not how life works. But a company like Hanjung, which we're very excited to welcome to our community, when they come in and they bring in their proprietary technology, they're right at the intersection of that challenge and the problem. And so what they've got is technology that helps us with energy storage, and energy storage that's being done in a way that it's mobile. It has built-in fire suppression systems, and it is liquid cooled so that it's less likely to have a fire. And when you talk to public safety, that's the big concern with any of these batteries, right? Whether it's a Tesla or something else, those batteries, once they start burning, now you get a chemical fire on your hands, and that's a whole nother ballgame. And so their technology, I think, allows us to better utilize the grid that we have as we transition to the grid of the future. And so we're really excited to see them make a home in Huntington and for Huntington to be part of that future.
And I'm truly excited. So as the Economic Development Director for Huntington County, I can tell you I'm excited. And I have met with these guys multiple times, and they are amazing. I mean, they are awesome. So really excited to see what happens there. Now, Steve, New Haven is experiencing a different kind of opportunity. According to the Census Bureau, vintage 2025 population estimates, New Haven grew from an April 2020 estimate base of 15,609 residents to 16,337 residents in July of 2025. That's an increase of 4.7%. So New Haven's comprehensive plan, talk about that. How does that affect New Haven with the population growth?
Well, I think it's important to note, and I actually brought some statistics along, and yes. I think that census number is way underestimated based upon the number of construction starts that we've had. But we have worked, our team, and again, as a leader, all I get credit for is having a vision, hiring the right team, and empowering them. They've done the heavy lifting. But we came out with a plan to make sure that our children would no longer leave New Haven to find a place to live that offered the amenities they wanted. So we worked really hard of having a wide variety of housing, both for purchase and for rent. There had not been any for rent units built, any multifamily units built since the early 90s in New Haven. That's unacceptable. And we lost generations of our youth that moved to Fort Wayne or elsewhere to find that apartment that had the amenities they wanted. So we worked really hard on that. We also worked really hard on making sure that we cleaned up our zoning and planning regulations and our engineering regulations to make sure that there was a loud and clear message that we are open for business. The message was not that before. The message was, don't bother investing money in this community. They're going to make it really hard for you. I guess I brought some stats that I wanted to share. In 2020, so January 1st, 2020, there were 5,265 single-family units in the city of New Haven. This is from the Allen County Assessor's Office. December 31st of 2025, so that's 6 years, counting 2020, there were 6,166, so 901 housing units have been built so far this decade.
That's great.
In addition to that, there's been another 49 permits pulled so far this year. Multifamily, that same date going in, starting with our administration, there were 729 total units. There now are 957. There were additional 134 permits pulled this year for multifamily, and we've got another multifamily complex with 250 grade A units that's coming online with groundbreaking next month. So we've had a 17% growth over that 6-year period in single-family homes and a 31% growth in multifamily. Now, you mentioned that 4.7% growth in population. If we just do some quick math, 2.51 people per unit, and we're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,400 new units. I believe our population is up over an additional 2,000 people, not just the number that you mentioned. And we've got a little thing going here. I've teased Mayor Strick that we're going to pass them as the number 2 city in the region.
Game on.
Game on, right?
We may just do that by 2030.
I love it. I love it. All right. So, what is the single biggest economic development challenge facing communities with populations under 25,000?
I'll go first on that. Our situation is a little unique. It's a little bit different than Logansport or Huntington in that we share 6 miles of border with Fort Wayne. So ours is a little bit different, right? But it's retail and it's hospitality. It's getting those inside of your community. Walmart doesn't care what your zip code is. They care if you're within 20 minutes of one or more of their stores. Applebee's doesn't care what the zip code they're in. They care if you're within 30 minutes of one of their locations. Aldi's doesn't care what zip code you're in or their store is in. They care whether you're served, and they consider you served within 30 minutes of one of their stores. So that's a big economic challenge for us, and that's why we've developed this sports tourism program with our field house, so that we have additional tourist visitors, we have additional demand for things like restaurants and retail and things like that. So that's our biggest issue, and that is also our way that we're working around it.
Yeah, and I think the reality is it's going to be a different issue for every community. But one thing I would generally point to is, it's the title of your podcast, and it's the overlooked aspect of it. So it's real easy, I think, for our communities to be just seen as data points to somebody who doesn't live there. And then when they do show up and they're interested in investment, I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding that they're the savior we've been waiting for, and we should just roll out every economic incentive for them. And the reality is it's a cost-benefit piece, and there are some that we're glad to help close the gap and make an economic deal, an opportunity come to reality. But there are others that, good luck in your next investment somewhere else. Because I'm not looking for somebody who's going to just extract wealth from my community. I'm looking for somebody who's going to add value to my community. And so Mayor's point earlier about the sense of civic pride. People are only going to respect you as much as you respect yourself. And if you throw yourself at every suitor, you throw yourself at every opportunity, ultimately you got to look yourself in the eye and say, am I leaving this better for the next generation? We plant trees for somebody else to enjoy. Well, the same thing when it comes to a TIF district. That's 20, 25 years of commitment from the community. We better make sure that there's a good ROI on that and that there's sustainability for the community moving forward with it. So
growth has to be responsible and sustainable.
Yep.
To grow just to grow makes absolutely no sense.
And sorry, have you seen that? Like, can you give a case of where that has happened? Like, because it does. I know there is.
I've seen it happen, and we've turned away discussion with developers because it wasn't something that made sense economically or for the future of our community. And we're not going to sacrifice. Here's the thing. So many politicians, they want to have that ribbon cutting or groundbreaking, and they want to have that flashy news that they brought 100 jobs or whatever. If they're not the 100 jobs that help benefit your community, why go through the exercise of doing that? You're taking 100 people out of the labor participation pool, out of the workforce, to work somewhere that isn't necessarily going to be what's best for the employees there or the community. I won't play along with that game.
Good. That's good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what is one issue smaller communities must begin addressing right now? And I have one. I'll start just to give you an example, so it does not become a much larger crisis by 2030. Mine would be the silver tsunami. With the last boomer turning 65 in 2030. And I think that this is an issue that I think that communities, especially with populations under 25,000, should absolutely be doing their own research and analyzing what this could do. So that's one of the things that I think we need to do to prevent it from becoming a larger problem.
But the answer to your question, I think, is an answer that I gave just a little bit ago. You need to have a quality of life, and that quality of life also includes a variety of housing options that somebody that just got out of college, for example, would be attracted to. The whole paradigm shifted 10, 15 years ago. It used to be people came to where there were jobs. Now jobs come to where there's people. If you're not attracting the right people, you're not going to get those jobs. So as I'm By the way, I'm Gen X for the record, not a boomer. But first of all, I have great confidence in the future generations. Every generation before has said, oh my gosh, we're going to go into hell in a handbasket or some variety of that with that next generation, right? You know what? We keep getting better. Again, I believe in the American dream. I believe that we're going to figure this out. And I just believe we need to look at things through a different lens. The day before I took office, I went in to City Hall in New Haven, and above all the time clocks, I put a saying that said, the most dangerous phrase in English language is we've always done it this way. I wanted to serve notice to everybody when they punched in. Not that you're going to be out of a job, but think differently. We can't do what we did in 2005 and expect it to work in 2020 or 2026 or 2030. We have to think differently.
Absolutely. I agree. Richard?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about the challenges, I just come back to basic fundamental principles. Every generation has said it's getting worse. All the way back to the Romans and Greeks, right?
Absolutely.
And, the reality is, I think the challenge is to remain open to inviting more and more people to the table and more people to the party. You know, we alluded earlier, where has bad growth occurred? And, you know, I'm not going to name names, but we can think of headlines and communities across our nation where 114,000 people are without water because a water main broke for weeks on end, right? That's not acceptable. Or we can think about places where, because of racism and redlining, there's heavily underinvested in residential areas and schools that suffer as a result of that. I think that gives us the opportunity in Northeast Indiana to extend a big invitation to the rest of the nation and say, we're going to do growth, we're going to do it sustainably, we're going to do it responsibly, we're going to invest in our infrastructure and bring as many people along for the ride as possible. So come turn over a new leaf here. And I think the challenge with that is breaking through all the noise. Making sure that folks can hear the message loud and clear, and they know what actions to take in light of it. And so how you break through social media, how you break through the headlines, pivoting from wave to wave in mass media, that's always a challenge. And it's just a new one for us to figure out. But again, at the end of the day, the best kind of marketing is word of mouth marketing. And so your folks, your people, and especially your young people need to know and have a sense of pride in their community, have a sense of feeling loved and affirmed, no matter the challenges of their individual household, and that there's a real future there. Whether they choose to participate in it in the next 4 years, 5 years, or 40 years, it's still there. And so, even one of the things we've recently started doing is, I've got a chance with our school corporation, because we're a countywide school entity. I get to address our graduating seniors every year, and I get to stand up there and basically repeat on behalf of the entire community, on behalf of their parents and their grandparents, and yes, even their sibling that gets on their nerves. We love you. We're so proud of you. We wish you the best. We want to give you a launch pad into the world, but we hope you'll come back and you'll bring your talents and you'll bring a family with you. And, whatever that opportunity is, you can find it and discover it here in Huntington.
That's awesome. Great message. All right, so I want to close with 3 quick questions. All right. So
lightning round, huh?
That's right. Okay. All right. So what is one thing your community is doing now that will make it stronger 5 years from today?
We're designing and planning a new water treatment plant right now. We're taking our line. Our facility's been in service since the 1950s. It is more than eligible for Social Security under even those conservative plans, and so we are going to make sure that we replace it and continue investing so that we have a viable future and reliable infrastructure for both residents and businesses.
We're working really hard on a connected community. When I say connected community, that's multifaceted. We've added quite a bit of trails in the last few years. Unlike Huntington, we had the River Greenway, but that kind of was it in New Haven, and we've been really working hard on that. So that's part of the connectivity. But also from a communication standpoint, before we came into office, there was no social media for the city. None of our events were live streamed. None of that information was out there. So we've been working diligently and intentionally and deliberately on creating that connected community through words, through construction, and I think that's so important to the future.
Well, and you bring up a good point there, because this is something that Mayor Strick and I have talked about with some of the leaders in Huntington, is that without a newspaper, people are relying on social media and those kinds of things. So that's a fair point.
Well, that's another difference between our communities too.
Uh-huh.
We get lost next to Fort Wayne.
Yes.
We truly.
Well, we get lost next to Fort Wayne too.
Right, but you've got some Huntington outlets that that will carry some stuff, right? We truly get lost. We're in the shadow. Sometimes that's not a bad thing, but many times that is. I beg all the time for people to come to our city council meetings. I literally will sit there and look out at two people in the audience and say, please come, this is your community. So,
Absolutely. All right, so second question, complete this sentence. A smaller community can compete when?
community pride.
Yeah, when it believes it can.
There you go. I like that. See, that was quick. I like it.
Who would have picked IU to win a national championship in football?
Me.
But Signetti believed it.
That's right. Exactly. What gives you the most confidence about your community's future?
Oh, that's simple. Our Mayor's Youth Advisory Council that we have, they just developed, I challenged them to develop, fund, design, and name a park. And they came through and they raised the money and they're doing it. So I look at that. Some people say it's the leadership of tomorrow, it's the leadership of today.
Yep, they're our present future, and I would echo the same. I mean, watching the first generation of our Mayor's Advisory Council launched what they call the Green Team at the high school, and with that, we've been able to partner with them, and we've established a tree nursery so they can continue planting in an affordable way throughout the rest of the community.
I'm taking notes on that. That's a great idea.
Right, exactly. Well, I'm taking notes on your connection thing. I think that's a great idea. Richard, Steve, thank you guys so much for coming. Appreciate all your service and everything you do. It does mean a lot, and I'll see you in Huntington, and I'll see you soon in New Haven.
Now, Chris, I can't end this without saying something here.
Okay.
Richard and I have become really good friends over the years. This is a great example. We approach governance differently, but at the same time, we have the same fundamental values. Mm-hmm. And if you looked at Richard and I next to each other, you might go, well, those two guys aren't in the same profession. We both love, care about our communities, get up every day trying to make our communities better. And I think this is a great example of there's no one way of being a community leader. There's no one way of being a mayor. It's all about heart. And we talk often about, I really don't care what party you are when it comes to local elections. I care about how much you care about your community. And I'm proud to sit here next to my friend, Mayor Richard Strick of Huntington.
It's an honor to have you guys. Thank you so much. The economy we entered into as mayors in 2020 is not the economy that we will continue to see. This is the overlooked economy. We're going to look at communities of a broader range, 25,000 or less, and we're going to focus on Northeast Indiana and Indiana itself as a whole. And so as we continue to move along on the overlooked economy, I want you to remember to choose love and to always support those who are supporting your community.